The world of international trade was rocked today as a seismic shift rippled through the global economy. In a decision that few saw coming, the United States Supreme Court stepped into the heart of a heated debate that has shaped the fate of industries, workers, and consumers around the world. The court struck down President Trump's sweeping tariffs, a move that instantly upended years of trade policy and sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in Washington and beyond. This landmark ruling dismantles a key pillar of the America First economic agenda, unraveling a strategy that had reshaped global supply chains and triggered fierce debate among economists and politicians alike. The markets responded with dramatic swings, as investors scrambled to assess the new landscape. The decision marks a profound rebalancing of power, not only within the U.S. government, between the executive and judicial branches, but also in America's relationships with its trading partners. Diplomats and lawmakers are now forced to reconsider alliances and strategies that have defined international commerce for decades. For years, these tariffs sparked economic friction, retaliatory measures, and deep uncertainty for businesses both large and small. Manufacturers, farmers, and retailers have all felt the impact, with some forced to close their doors, while others struggled to adapt to rapidly changing rules. The court's ruling raises fundamental questions about the president's authority to unilaterally reshape trade relationships under the guise of a national emergency. Legal experts are already debating whether this sets a precedent that will limit executive power for generations to come. Importers and foreign governments are breathing a sigh of relief, hopeful that this decision will restore stability and predictability to the global marketplace. Many see it as a chance to rebuild trust and cooperation after years of escalating trade wars. Meanwhile, the White House and its supporters are decrying the ruling as judicial overreach, arguing that it undermines the president's ability to protect American interests and respond swiftly to global threats. The story is far from over. The consequences are still unfolding in real time. Around the world, business leaders and policymakers are watching closely, bracing for ripple effects that could reshape industries and economies. Legal scholars will spend months, if not years, dissecting the court's reasoning and its implications for the separation of powers. Economists will model its impact on everything from consumer prices to global supply chains, trying to predict how this new legal landscape will affect growth and stability. And world leaders will navigate the fallout, seeking new agreements and forging fresh partnerships in a rapidly changing environment. What's clear is that the Supreme Court has redefined the limits of executive power and the rule of law in global trade, setting a precedent that will echo for years to come. This moment will define the remainder of President Trump's term, challenge his legacy, and reshape the way America engages with the world. The world is watching as a new chapter in economic history begins, one that will test the resilience of institutions, the adaptability of markets, and the strength of international cooperation. To truly grasp the significance of today's Supreme Court decision, we need to journey back to the origins of the Trump tariffs, a policy shift that reshaped global trade and American industry. The story begins in 2018, when President Donald Trump, fulfilling a key campaign promise, announced sweeping tariffs on imported goods. This move was not just about economics, it was a bold statement of intent, signaling a new era in U.S. trade policy. At the heart of Trump's America First agenda, these tariffs were designed to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States, reduce the nation's persistent trade deficits, and penalize countries, most notably China, for what the administration called unfair trade practices. The tariffs targeted steel, aluminum, and a wide range of consumer goods, sending shockwaves through global supply chains. To justify these sweeping measures, the administration invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, citing national security concerns, and later relied on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. These legal tools gave the president broad authority to impose tariffs without the usual approval from Congress. This approach allowed the White House to bypass traditional legislative checks, targeting not only economic rivals like China, but also long-standing allies in Europe, Canada, and beyond. The result was a series of escalating trade disputes that reverberated across the globe, straining diplomatic relationships and sparking retaliatory tariffs. Billions of dollars worth of goods were suddenly subject to new taxes at the border. For American manufacturers, this meant higher costs for raw materials. For consumers, it often translated into higher prices at the checkout counter. The tariffs also fueled a tit-for-tat trade war with China, disrupting markets and creating uncertainty for businesses large and small. Supporters of the tariffs pointed to new factory openings and a renewed sense of economic nationalism. They argued that the policy protected American jobs and industries from unfair foreign competition. Critics, however, countered that consumers bore the brunt of higher prices, exporters lost access to key markets, and farmers faced mounting losses as their goods piled up unsold. This fundamental conflict between protectionism and free trade set the stage for a series of legal battles. As lawsuits mounted, the question of presidential authority over trade policy eventually made its way to the Supreme Court, where the stakes could not have been higher. Years later, the debate over the effectiveness of the Trump tariffs remains unresolved. Economists, politicians, and business leaders continue to argue over whether the tariffs helped or hurt the American economy, and what lessons should be drawn for future trade policy. Today's Supreme Court ruling marks the dramatic climax of this long-running economic and legal saga, closing one chapter in America's ongoing struggle to define its place in the global economy. Legal challenges to the tariffs began immediately, with businesses arguing the president overstepped constitutional authority. The core issue: only Congress can regulate foreign commerce, not the executive. Lower courts were divided, but the Supreme Court agreed to hear the consolidated case. The central question: did the president have authority under IEPA to impose tariffs by declaring a trade emergency? The case became a critical test of presidential power in the 21st century. The court's decision would set a precedent for the limits of executive authority. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled the Trump administration's use of IEPA for broad tariffs was executive overreach. The majority, led by Chief Justice Roberts, drew a line between true emergencies and long-term economic policy. Chronic trade deficits, the court said, don't meet the legal standard for emergency powers. The ruling voids tariffs imposed under IEPA, raising questions about billions in collected import fees. The dissent warned this could hamstring future presidents facing novel threats. The majority's view now stands as law, reinforcing Congress's authority over trade. The government faces a logistical nightmare over potential refunds. The decision is a defining moment for the separation of powers. The Supreme Court's decision will impact everything from consumer prices to global diplomacy. This ruling marks a turning point, not just for policymakers and economists, but for everyday Americans and businesses across the country. Its ripple effects will be felt in shopping aisles, boardrooms, and even in international negotiations. Americans may see lower prices on goods like electronics as the cost of importing these products drops. For families looking to upgrade their devices or buy new appliances, this could mean more affordable options on store shelves. Clothing and other everyday items could also become less expensive as tariffs disappear, though these changes won't happen overnight. Retailers may gradually pass savings on to consumers, so the full impact could take months to materialize. Businesses relying on imports will benefit, gaining access to cheaper materials and products. This could help small businesses stay competitive and potentially expand their offerings. On the other hand, protected industries, like certain manufacturing sectors, will face renewed competition from abroad, which could lead to tough choices, restructuring, or even job losses in some communities. Internationally, the ruling could ease trade tensions, opening the door for more stable relationships with key trading partners. Countries that once imposed retaliatory tariffs may now reconsider, fostering a more cooperative global trade environment. This could lead to the rollback of retaliatory tariffs, benefiting U.S. exporters, especially farmers and manufacturers, who have struggled to access foreign markets in recent years. However, the issue of refunds for billions in tariffs already paid remains unresolved, creating uncertainty for companies that have shouldered these costs. Many are now seeking clarity on whether they'll recoup some of their losses. The outcome has major implications for both businesses and the federal budget, as potential refunds could impact government revenue and future spending priorities. The decision re-levels the playing field, creating new winners and losers. Some industries will thrive, while others may need to adapt quickly to survive in a more open market. The economic story is complex and still unfolding, with analysts and investors watching closely for signs of what comes next. The ruling may help repair strained alliances, encouraging renewed dialogue and cooperation on broader economic issues. But other trade disputes persist, And not all international disagreements will be resolved by this decision alone. Investors and companies will be watching the legal and economic fallout closely, adjusting their strategies as the landscape shifts. The final chapter of the story is yet to be written, and its outcome will shape the economic future for years to come. The political fallout is immediate. This ruling is a blow to President Trump's America First agenda and his view of executive power. Congress, long sidelined, is now empowered to reclaim its constitutional authority over trade. Lawmakers are likely to pursue reforms to emergency powers laws to prevent future overreach. The decision sets a precedent that will constrain future presidents, making the balance of power a key issue in the 2028 election. The court's 6-3 split shows that questions of institutional power can transcend partisan lines. The judiciary is signaling a willingness to check the executive branch. Expect more high-stakes confrontations between the White House and the Supreme Court. Legal scholars see this ruling as less about trade policy and more about who gets to make policy. The court clarified that emergency powers can't be used for long-term economic issues. Those are Congress's domain. Experts note the decision doesn't ban all tariffs, just those imposed under IEEPA for general trade disputes. Tariffs for direct national security threats may still be allowed under other laws. The ruling fits a broader trend. The court is drawing new boundaries for presidential authority. This decision is a major piece of that puzzle. The judiciary is increasingly skeptical of unchecked executive power. The consequences for the presidency will be lasting. Behind the headlines are real people, families and small businesses caught in the crossfire of the trade war. Small importers faced impossible choices: absorb costs, raise prices, or close down. Some workers in protected industries saw jobs saved, but now face renewed uncertainty. Overseas, factory workers and farmers also suffered from lost orders and markets. The ruling doesn't erase years of disruption. Supply chains won't snap back overnight. Businesses that closed won't magically reopen, and trust between trading partners must be rebuilt. The human impact is profound. Trade policy is never just about numbers. It's about jobs, families, and futures. The decision highlights the painful trade-offs of economic policy. The human stories remind us what's truly at stake. This Supreme Court decision is more than a verdict on tariffs. It's a statement about American democracy. The court drew a firm line defending the separation of powers, reminding us that process matters. The ruling will shape the actions of this president and those who follow. It's a call for citizens to reflect on the kind of government we want: swift executive action or checks and balances. The practical effects on prices, diplomacy, and industry will unfold in the months ahead. The legal battles over refunds are just beginning. This is a lesson in the resilience of our constitutional system. The debate over trade and presidential power continues, but the framework for that debate is now clear. The work of shaping our republic is ongoing, and this decision is a defining moment in that journey.